This is Marco Reus.
This is Shinji Kagawa.
This is Nuri Shahin.
Hello, this is Jadon Sancho.
And you're listening to the Yellow Wall podcast.
Hello and welcome to episode 499 of the Yellow Wall Pods. I'm Josef from Butzko, and today we will talk about Borussia Dortmund beating St. Pauli. That means back-to-back Bundesliga wins for the first time this season and 1-1 draw against Lille. And yeah, I guess we will also preview the Augsburg game and the return leg against Lille. So if you're here and listening, thanks for tuning in, since this is probably not the most tasty lineup, but we have a very tasty lineup here in my co-host spot, which is Lars Pollmann. Hello, Lars. How are you doing?
Hello, Stefan. This time I'm objecting to your calling me tasty, I suppose. But I'm fine, Stefan. How are you?
I'm doing well. I'm doing very well. So, let's talk about the games. Let's start with the St. Pauli game, which I watched entirely on I-95 heading to Brooklyn, since my wife and I had a little day trip to New York City on Saturday. And I must say I was relatively pleased, maybe not with the performance, but definitely with the result. I think 2-0 is sort of the exact result you kind of want to have in a game which more or less is a little tricky. I think we can be content with the amount of chances Dortmund allowed. I don't recall St. Pauli having too many forceful things, and the goals were scored in a very nice way. Especially the Adeyemi goal I really liked. Was a nice one-man counterattack to, I don't know if you want to call it the dagger or not, but I mean, considering it's Borussia Dortmund, there was still 30 minutes left to fumble this game. But yeah, 2-0 felt, at least for me, like this was beyond St. Pauli at this point, since they are also not really known for scoring many goals. Lars, what, if any, are your takeaways from that game other than back-to-back clean sheets in the Bundesliga?
I would say it's the kind of assured performance they've been lacking, especially on the road against these teams that you should beat, but aren't pushovers. If memory serves, St. Pauli lost by 1 goal to Leverkusen, to Bayern, by 2 goals to Leipzig, and they even beat Stuttgart this season. So they aren't pushovers. They had the third best defense in the Bundesliga going into this match day. Away from home, this is the kind of game where at earlier parts of the season you would probably have come away with a draw at best, or maybe a dumb late goal even costing you that 1 point. So I think if you wanted to take a positive perspective, you would say they were solid in the first half, kind of let the game come to them. I think Bensebaini had a very important block against Noah Weishaupt, who otherwise gave him a lot of problems, especially in the first half. And then in the second half, Dortmund pushed up a bit. They changed up the build-up setup, with Jan Couto moving a bit further up the pitch often, which St. Pauli weren't really able to deal with. And then Couto was involved in the 1-0, which obviously was a bit of a scrappy tap-in from Guirassy at the end, but I think the first touch of Adeyemi was quite nice. And the pass to Guirassy, he was blocked, and then, on the ricochet, doing what a striker does, I suppose. And then obviously, as you mentioned, the Adeyemi one-man counter. I think some people want Maxi Bayer to get an assist for that. I'm not so sure if a desperation move up front just to clear the ball should be categorized as an assist, but still a nice goal. I think the comparisons to the Chelsea Champions League goal, I don't know if I would go that far, but it was certainly nice to see Adeyemi, from my perspective anyway, not look to get the opponent sent off with a Doxo red card, but rather going for goal. And then obviously a cool, calm, collected finish. With Adeyemi, he's not necessarily known for being, the best decision taker in the final third. So it's nice to see him come on in that regard in the last few games. Obviously, we are going to talk about Lille as well, which wasn't necessarily, taking much of a decision because it was a volley after a corner kick. But still, it's good to see Adeyemi getting more scoring output, because that's the one thing that usually is missing from his game, which otherwise offers so much. But when he's not scoring, sometimes you ask yourself, is what's missing in terms of how can he, make more use of his considerable qualities. So it's nice to see him get on the score sheet a bit more frequently. And I think the second goal definitely was the dagger, because St. Pauli just don't have the individual quality, especially without Guilavogui, their best scorer, to do much of anything. And yeah, it's nice to go come away from an away game in the Bundesliga with basically nothing to worry about for 90 minutes. It's definitely a rare occurrence this Bundesliga season.
Yeah. What do you make of Jan Kutu at right back overall, since it was his, I think, first start under Kovac in that position, who previously said he sees him more as a wing back, which is, I guess, accurate. I think after the game in the news conference, he said something along the lines of, I had to lie a little bit about whether he would play or not, to sort of surprise St. Pauli. I don't know, but nevertheless, what are your thoughts on him playing in that role against an opponent like that?
I think it makes sense. It's kind of a two-sided coin or whatever, which I guess every coin is two-sided, but you know what I mean. When Kutu plays, almost every attack comes over his flank. The problem is that it's both attacking and defense. He's very involved in, getting the ball upfield. He's an outlet on the wing, much more so than Riosson, I would say. But defensively, he has some deficiencies. I think you can definitely see him struggle a bit more when the team is struggling. So, for example, when he was brought on against Lille for I don't know how many minutes, he definitely struggled.
Yeah, quite a lot.
Had a few misplaced passes and such, but the game against St. Pauli, when the team was more solid, shows that in the right kind of structure, when he's supported by players, you can definitely make use of his technical skill, his football IQ, I would also say, at least going forward. I still think there's a really good player in there. They haven't really been able to harness that because the situation hasn't been stable enough. And obviously, a young man coming here from Spain doesn't know the language, doesn't know the Bundesliga, and then Dortmund having the struggles they had. It's not a great situation. And I think sometimes we forget that he's just not used to this style of football as well. When we're talking about Maximilian Bayer being a bit of a disappointing signing in terms of his scoring output, even though he offers quite a bit, in terms of defensive work rate and whatnot. Maxi Bayer has played in Germany for his entire career, and knows the Bundesliga, knows the language and all that stuff. And Couto is more or less the only player who came to Dortmund from a completely different situation this summer, if memory serves. And obviously, now that they also signed Daniel Svensson, who's come on immediately, that's also the way it can go. So it's not like I want to, be an apologist for everything Couto has done or hasn't done this season, but still, I think there's a good player in there. They need to harness that. And I'm not entirely sure Niko Kovac is the kind of manager to get the best out of Couto long term, but certainly in these games where they seem to be more stable, he should be a solution.
Yeah, I would agree, but as you already mentioned, he did struggle quite. I don't know if you want to say severely, but he did struggle quite a bit for sure against Lille. But yeah, let's talk about that game. I have the FB ref stats sheet right in front of me, and first thing that comes to mind, or that sort of sticks out next to the scoreline, is the expected goals. 0.3 only for Dortmund in a home match in the Champions League is very little. Meanwhile, Lille with a 0.9 expected goals. I think overall we can say it was a very cagey affair. There weren't many chances on either side. Maybe Dortmund should have made it 2-0 when Julian Brandt won the ball off a defender in the opponent's box and just couldn't connect with any of the oncoming attackers, be it Adeyemi or I think Sabitzer sort of squared it to exactly no one. But let's remain a little bit chronological. So Kovac did make a few changes. We had, as you just mentioned, Daniel Svensson starting. And of course, Riasson was back in the lineup for Couto, and Jamie Gittens replaced Maximilian Bayer, and Julian Brandt replaced Gio Reyna. Other than that, with Girassi and Adeyemi and such, it all stayed the same. But I want to say sort of the first 15-20 minutes, Lille certainly were the better team. Then Dortmund did manage to break through, and what I really liked about the opening stage from Dortmund after, say, 10 or so minutes is that they finally started to press Lille very intensely, and I think that resulted in and yielded in a lot of good counter-attacking or transition moments, and just overall won the ball quite nicely to not really have too many opportunities and to Lille. But that being said, I still thought that overall Lille had a very good control on the ball, a lot of good possession moments for them. But we can talk about that in a little bit. First, obviously, we need to talk about that hit from Karim Adeyemi, because that's, to me, already a goal of the season contender. Honestly, I don't think you can hit it any sweeter than he did. Just a beautiful, gorgeous volley, and it took me a good second to realize that the ball actually found the back of the net. Yeah, just a beautiful shot, bit like a painting. I don't know why it popped into my head, but I was reminded of Peristed's equalizer in Dortmund's first Champions League game under Klopp against Arsenal. It was a home match that I actually was in the stadium for and was on the north stand, so I actually had like a perfect view of that Perisic goal. But I digress. Lars, like I said, I thought Lille played pretty well overall in this game. But what do you make of Dortmund? Because I did read a lot of criticism at Dortmund sort of gave the game away. To me, it didn't quite feel like that, because I thought Lille overall were slightly better. So I'm not sure if I think Dortmund really gave much away, since they were not really the dominant team in a home game, the Champions League round of 16 to begin with. What are your thoughts on that performance from Dortmund?
The thing is that the criticism isn't just leveled at Dortmund from the outside. The players and Kovac and also Sebastian Kehl were very critical of their performance themselves, and they said they gave the game away, basically. I think the first half, even though I would agree that Lille were better in the very initial stage, so for the first 10 minutes or so.
Yeah.
After that point, as you mentioned, Dortmund pushed up a bit in terms of pressing, had a lot of, or one possession quite often, and to me, the quality of the game overall in the first half was quite poor. I mean, Lille overhit so many passes. I think Meunier didn't finish a pass. Mbappe was invisible. The 17-year-old who also studies math on the side, he pushed the ball outside of the boundary at least 3 times without any opponent pressuring him. So the quality of the game was poor, but Dortmund had it under control. I mean, there were a couple of pot shots from distance, but it wasn't like Lille did anything with the amount of possession they had. I think Dortmund were quite happy to let them pass the ball around a bit in non-dangerous areas. Then after the goal by Adeyemi, there were a couple of moments. You alluded to the Brandt situation. They also scored an offside goal by Pascal Gross, which I think on initial viewing looked to be much clearer than it actually was, because one of the Lille defenders had his leg extended a bit. So I think that offside decision was a bit closer than it might have appeared. But anyway, and then in the second half, there was a complete lack of intensity, which again, something that they said themselves. I think Emre Can said something to the extent of, we didn't go where it hurts anymore, and that's somewhere you have to go, because Lille is a team who like to have control and like to pass the ball around, and you have to pressure them, put up a stop sign, sometimes maybe, a couple of fouls here and there, just to break up their flow, which isn't to say there was great flow from Lille. I mean, one of my main takeaways from the game overall was, I don't know how Lille made it to this stage without having to go through the extra knockout round. But I do know why and how Dortmund let them get back into the game, because, as I said, complete lack of intensity and focus. They gave the ball away far too easily. They basically only got out of their back half whenever they hoofed the ball up front, and Girassi was on an island, basically completely devoid of any service. The only moments, and there were only like 2 or 3 in the second half, came when Adeyemi ran on the ball himself. Don't think the substitutions, for example, Bayer did much to help. Not that that was a bad sub, because Gittens also wasn't very much in the game, but sometimes these things just happen. And to be honest, I would argue that the way the second half went, a 1-1 draw was quite a good result for Dortmund. I think also Dortmund were quite lucky for Schlotterbeck not to have given away a penalty. Then others will probably point out that Angel Gomez should have been sent off for the challenge on Svensson, even though it was more unlucky than any malicious
I think it was
intent.
Andre Gomez, not Angel.
Yeah, sorry. Even though that was more like an unlucky situation than a deliberate attempt to, I don't know, stop the play or whatever.
I mean, it's still challenged from behind and sort of stepped on his heels. So
yeah,
I would have.
The thing that, even though I'm now digressing, the thing that completely baffles me is how they even had a review of that incident, because when Svensson was still on the ground, Sabitzer played the free kick quickly, and the game wasn't stopped, and then Dortmund pushed the ball outside because Svensson was still on the ground. So the situation had already been played on. So there can be no VAR review from what I understand of the protocols, but they did do a review. So maybe they reviewed whether or not the referee had actually allowed the play to go on, or, the players just played on and there was no whistle. So maybe you could have done something. But to me, once Sabitzer hits that free kick and the referee doesn't stop play, the situation is over and it can't be checked. So I think if the physios had been let on the pitch to take care of Svensson immediately, I think Gomez is probably off, because the challenge itself is a red card challenge, in my opinion. But the way the sequence went, he couldn't have been sent off, so I don't understand why they even reviewed it.
Yeah, overall refereeing performance probably not the best. I mean, Haraldsson was very frustrated in the first half, because there were like 3 or 4 situations where clearly a Dortmund player touched the ball last as it went out of play, and the referee decided otherwise. But yeah, obviously get well soon to Daniel Svensson, because as Dortmund said today, he suffered an inner ligament injury in his knee and will not be available in the matches before the upcoming international break. And I'm obviously wondering if he's going to be available at all. I don't know how severe it is, of course, but it did not look great. So fingers crossed, because he has definitely shown that he has been a valuable addition. And very unlucky, very unfortunate situation. And of course, also a bit frustrating, I find, because Dortmund's depth is not great to begin with. Bensebaini, I think, and having sort of this interchangeable lineup is really helpful because, as you said, lack of intensity, and I think one of the reasons is simply that Dortmund's conditioning is just not good enough. So I don't know. That's just how it looked to me, that they were just they just ran out of gas in the second half, and pretty early on in the second half. I mean, the fact that they were unable to string simple passes together in midfield, and that our fullbacks, when we talk about the struggles that Couto had, I think we need to sort of preface that with saying that Riasson had similar struggles in the second half, because they were also isolated. When the fullbacks received the ball, there was no one making a run coming toward them or anything to alleviate any pressure. There was certainly a moment that I remember where Riasson basically just had the ball napped off him because he had nowhere else to go than forward, basically. Obviously, he stepped on the ball and passed it back to Kobel, but that's obviously not the sort of what you want to do in build-up all the time. And overall, just weird atmosphere in the stadium too. Felt like there was a lot of frustration with the game overall. I don't know. Like you said, it was not the best Champions League game we've ever seen, and to me that's a bit of a shame, because the Syria team is good. They certainly know how to play possession football. They know how to create a few chances, and I think we all could see the quality of Jonathan David, who had this really cool assist for Haraldsson, who then scored, what minute was it? I think the 68th minute or so. Not saying that the goal was really coming, but it also was not, I guess. I don't know. But to me, this very much feels like a lost opportunity, and I don't know how Dortmund will manage the return leg, but my optimism for Dortmund advancing from this tie is not extremely high, considering that the lack of energy with the backing of the home crowd being this flaccid does not really make you optimistic about the output in the return leg in a week's time. Lars, are you optimistic that Dortmund can or rather will make it past Lille in the round of 16, or do you think because a 1-1 draw at home is such a meh result that it's more likely that they're going to bow out now?
Quite honestly, the game in Dortmund, I don't really think it should change anyone's point of view particularly, because as I said, the quality of the game was fairly low. I don't think I saw anything special from Lille that, Dortmund can't overcome on a good day. Obviously, we don't know how many good days are in this Dortmund team, but that was the case even before. And I think few people will have expected, the first leg to be like a 3-0 win and the tie basically being over after 90 minutes. It's just, unless you're PSV against Arsenal, that's just not something that happens too often in the Champions League at this stage. And especially not from, this Dortmund side. I mean, I certainly didn't expect the tie to basically be over after 90 minutes. So they go into Lille with everything to play for. And would anyone be shocked after the game yesterday if Dortmund had held on for a 1-0 win? No. So why wouldn't they be able to do the same in Lille? I don't know. I think the international experience of Dortmund could still be a factor, because if I'm not mistaken, I read somewhere that Lille have actually never won a Champions League knockout game, because obviously they made it into the round of 16 directly, so they didn't have to go through the knockout or the extra knockout stage. So I don't know. I don't think the game in Dortmund should change your opinion too much, because neither side showed any qualities that we weren't aware of before. So it's just 90 minutes knockout football, maybe 120 minutes, and Dortmund, if there's one thing that Dortmund have shown in the Champions League, for whatever reason, they don't crumble under that sort of pressure too much. So if you were optimistic on Tuesday at 8:59 German time, then you should still be optimistic now.
Fair enough. Would you make any changes to the lineup for the return leg?
I mean, Daniel Svensson can't play.
Obviously, yes. So Benzemaini
yes.
will play left back.
They have a Bundesliga game in between, which I think it's sometimes funny how a lot of people seem to forget that they aren't in a situation in the Bundesliga where they can just say, well, screw it, we play Lille on Wednesday evening. They have to beat Augsburg at home.
Yes.
So ask me after that game, I suppose, but seeing as the next episode will probably be recorded when I'm in Prague, you will have to ask Matthias and mystery guest X if we'll have one for the Jubilee episode.
Yeah, we'll see. Yeah, in the meantime, I don't know. Maybe we should just take a look at the maybe lineup changes potentially for the Augsburg game, because I don't know. I feel like this is more of a must-win game than the Champions League round of 16. Obviously, making to the quarterfinal is nice to have, and Dortmund certainly need any Euro they can win in this competition. I know it sounds not great from a sporting perspective, how I'm saying this. So every football romantic, close your ears. However, the Bundesliga is, I don't know, I still feel like the way everyone else is playing in the Bundesliga, there is still a chance that Dortmund may finish in the top 4, but only if they turn things around and go on a bit of a winning streak now. And obviously Augsburg at home is certainly one of those games you have to win. So Lars, similar question, what changes from the Lille lineup would you make to Augsburg, if any, to give Dortmund the best chance to win that game?
It feels like Niko Kovac isn't going to change too much, regardless of, I mean, obviously he's doing it regardless of what we're saying, but you know what I mean. I think he's going to double down, especially on Brandt, because now, obviously, he had a poor performance against Lille, which, you know, as did Girassi, as did Gittens. So, you know, I don't necessarily understand why the media has to go all in only on Brandt, but, you know, there's always got to be a scapegoat in Dortmund. I appreciate that part of it. But I still think, especially also because Gio Reyna didn't really do anything of note, and Chukwuemeka, if he's even available for selection, he's still not going from the random sub appearance to starting an important Bundesliga home match. So it's going to be Brandt, I'm assuming, and then the question between Bayer and Gittens might as well be the question of who does Kovac want to start in Lille, because I'm assuming the other is going to start against Augsburg, because those positions are the ones where changes are most easily done without, you know, breaking up the flow of the team. Not that there was too much flow against Lille. And as I said, they aren't in a position where they can just say, I don't know, Adeyemi, you get a break, and Duranville starts randomly because Adeyemi's on a good run of form. So that doesn't work. Girassi can't be replaced, just in terms of squad planning. Schlotterbeck and Can are too solid together for there to be a change. If you wanted to give Süle minutes, you might start Riasson on the left and Süle on the right, but it's not like that worked particularly well against Bochum. So I'm not surprised that Kovac is keeping mostly to the same, let's say, core of players. I mean, is anyone expecting like Kjell Wätjen to randomly pop up in one of these Bundesliga games? I'm certainly
Not really. No.
And the same goes for like Almu Kaba and some of the other kids. And even Duranville, I would almost put him in that bracket right now, because the situation is too serious perhaps to, just throw someone in and, see whether he can do something. it's just the situation they're in. It's also worth pointing out, I think, if they are eliminated against Lille, the season is over in 11 match days. It's not like you have to take too much of a look in terms of, managing the load and whatnot. I mean, obviously we talked about, or a little bit about, the fitness issues late in the game against Lille, but that's usually something that only creeps up during the games, and it's not like you take too much of a note of that in terms of the starting lineup. So to make my long-winded answer a bit shorter, I don't expect many changes, if any, outside of Svensson.
All right. Yeah, I agree. I mean, I would maybe start Gio Reyna instead of Brandt, considering how Brandt is performing right now. But I think Niko Kovac is not the sort of coach who makes that adjustment. I think he is just going to stick with Brandt until Brandt is injured again or suspended or whatnot. Yeah, I really hope that they manage to beat Augsburg, who have, I think, lost 1 out of the last 9 or so. They had like a 3-game win streak against Union Berlin, Bremen, Heidenheim, then a draw against St. Pauli. Their only loss came against Stuttgart, and I think from the last 4 games they beat Gladbach surprisingly 3-0. But the last 4 games are 3 scoreless draws against Mainz, Leipzig, and Freiburg, who are all teams that are definitely performing better than Dortmund right now. So they are not an easy team to beat, if you will. I think the only time they really fell apart this season, correct me if I don't know, you probably don't remember any other game, but it was the one against Kiel. I think the 5-1 would never happen to Dortmund falling apart in Kiel. So there's that. But no, honestly, Augsburg are always, I don't want to say always the same, but more or less it holds true. They are always a mediocre Bundesliga team that are, just good enough to not be in the relegation scrap. Sometimes they dip in it, sometimes they don't. Sometimes they fight a little bit for the European spots, but usually they're a classic mid-table team. I don't know, must be a very dull experience to be an Augsburg fan, honestly. But yeah, my hope is that Dortmund can simply take care of that and maybe even make this a fun experience again, just like they did in the game against, was it Union Berlin? I don't know. I don't have too many thoughts on that game. I just hope that Dortmund recuperate well and don't lay another egg, because those 2 Bundesliga wins in a row were nice, but Augsburg is not the game where you then lose that streak again. Obviously, this is a must win for Dortmund, and I'll treat it as that. And if it's a draw, it's already, in my book, an embarrassing result. Lars, do you have any final thoughts?
I will just say that Augsburg have the best defense in all of Europe's big leagues in 2025.
That's impressive.
They've conceded 2 goals in this calendar year, if that's the stat I read. I mean, given that, and also you mentioned the 3 goalless draws and a 3-0 win at Gladbach, in which Gladbach were down a man after their goalkeeper was sent off, but still, it's not like those games are immediately 3-0 wins for the opposition. It's going to be tough. I don't expect, a repetition of the 6-0 against Union, which, I mean, I would take that. I'll basically, in the Bundesliga, I take any serious, normal performance with a decent score line, and given the strength Augsburg have shown, I would be surprised if it was anything more than maybe a 1-0 to 1 kind of victory, if even that. I mean, I would definitely not be shocked if Dortmund have a bit of a Champions League hangover, or maybe take, one eye on Wednesday in Lille. I think that's just human. And Augsburg, in their current Nico form, seem to be the kind of team that can, take advantage of that at least a little bit. I just don't want, what's his name? Alexis Claude Maurice, who scored, I think, all 3 goals against Gladbach, who scored a brace against Dortmund in the first meeting. I just don't want to see him hit another low shot from 20 meters that Gregor Kobel probably should save.
Yeah, I would agree with that. All right, Lars, and thank you very much. And yeah, we'll be back, I guess, after the next Lille game to assess those 2 games we just previewed. And yeah, as always, thank you for listening. Until then, goodbye.